Jeff. Sorry, what? Not that I was aware of, no. Rebecca, are you ready to start?
Yes.
Let's get this meeting underway. City of Anamosa City Council regular session, Monday, July 27, 2020. Anamosa Library and Learning Center, also via Zoom. 1.0 roll call.
Capron.
Here.
Stout.
Here.
Zumba. Mopper.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Crump.
Here.
We have a majority to continue. 2.0 Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rebecca, would you give a reminder to those that are attending this meeting virtually, the protocols and how to get your attention to address the council?
Yes. So those of you who are joining us on your computers, you can go ahead and either send me a message in the chat, or you can what Zoom calls raise your hand. If you don't see that option available to you, you can click on the participants button, and that should bring up a list of everybody who's joined, and you should see an option that says raise hand. So if you do that, I should see that, and we'll get in contact with you and let you know that I've seen it and when you can talk. I see somebody has joined us through their phone. In order to raise your hand, I believe it's *9. Yeah, *9 on your phone will raise your hand and let me know that you'd like to speak, and I'll let you know when you've become unmuted. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Rebecca. 3.0 approval of agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by John, motion by Kay, second by John to approve the agenda as submitted. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimous. 4.0, motion to approve the minutes from the following meetings. 4.1, July 13th, 2020, regular council meeting.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Rich, second by Galen to approve. Any further council discussion? All those in favor of accepting the minutes as submitted signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimous. 5.0 public hearings. 5.1 public hearing on proposal of the city to sell real property directly north and adjacent to 216 East Main, also identified as auditor's parcel number 0902353052. I will open the public hearing at this time. Has there been any inquiries from the public?
No written comments.
Rebecca, is there any questions or comments from the public?
There is not.
Council?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Rich, second by Kay to close the public hearing. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion to close carries unanimous. 5.2, resolution authorizing sale of property, sell real property directly north and adjacent to 216 East Main, also identified as auditor's parcel number 0902353052.
So moved.
Motion by Galen. Is there a second on Galen's motion? Galen's motion dies for lack of a second. I would like to ask the council, what is the reasoning not to sell the property?
Well, I've got two things.
Okay.
One, within the purchase or within this purchase agreement, I did not see an easement for the storm sewer or any public utilities.
I thought I had seen something that mentioned it, but maybe it was
Well,
in general terms.
Yeah, together with these ones.
yeah, but together with easements, do we have an actual easement already in place? It said with any easements and appurtenant serving estates. I'm not sure that we have it in there, that we do have an easement for that storm sewer. We've had issues with other property because it hasn't been spelled out in great detail. So with that, I would like to see that more detail.
Okay, more clarification on any and all easements.
Yeah, and the second thing is I'd like to see a higher price.
Okay. For council's information, this was initially brought to the city attorney, and they were looking at what Patrick O'Connell and Jacob thought would be fair market price. Jacob had reached out to me and my thoughts on it, and I'll just give you the same thoughts now as I had then. I believe the square footage of this property is around 960 some square feet. What they did at that time was applied it to the footprint and the building existing. And they came up with a fair market value of $5 and some change on what this square footage would be. I voiced my concern to Jacob by applying that formula. I would be in agreement if it was a lot or a lot larger footprint, but 965 square feet really has zero building capacity. Now I get when you add it to existing that, you know, it can become a higher value price. But I was looking at this as a standalone sell, and I do not believe that it warranted anything close to that fair market value they came up with. So this $1 per square foot is what I believe Jacob, the city attorney, had thought was a better proposal to sell it at. So I believe that's where they came up with the $1 per square foot.
Well, in discussion last time with Jacob, he said that this is what Dean offered and negotiated to. So if we started off at 5 and ended up at 1,
Mhm.
and if you consider that we've sold in the past at 25 cents, he's not even getting to that $750 fine range. He's getting close, but he's not there.
Sure.
So I'd like to see it higher to at least have a minimum $750 fine. Because he built plus poured cement on ground that was owned by the city. If that's the case and we're gonna just, somebody could go along and go ahead and do that and say, well, now you sell it to me for little to nothing and there's no penalty for doing it.
Yeah, that's my reservations too. I mean, it's not really about the money. It's more about the principle, how he went about it. I mean, he's a habitual offender, and we're almost, for lack of a better word, enabling him. I mean, he didn't follow the rules, and conveniently now he can just buy a piece of cheap property and all of a sudden become in compliance. It just,
But sets a precedent
Yep.
that we perhaps don't want
that you
to
can ask
set.
for forgiveness later than doing it right up front. I guess
And
I don't have a problem, normally I wouldn't have a problem selling it. It's just in this instance that we're dealing with.
well, the fact that it took him so long to get to this point because it's been over a year.
But my feeling is a lot of the foot dragging was on the city's end. We were
I don't
we were
believe that
hesitant.
because he knew going in that property was owned by the city. When he came to the city over a year ago asking to buy it and got mad because we couldn't sell it to him at that moment, at that time, because we didn't have a public hearing. And then the next day he turned around and starts his project.
Well, then, if I remember, we didn't know who owned it, and we had to do some research to find out who did.
On part of it, but the other part, we knew the city owned it. So he knowingly violated construction.
So this piece we're talking about selling is not really gonna get him in compliance. There's a piece in between that I'd say the bulk of this building sits on, that's on the unknown owner.
Correct.
So, I mean, it's the first part of it, but the piece of property, the little triangle closest to where he's on is, if you go on Beacon, it's unknown last owner.
Well, this was surveyed out. And I thought we identified,
Is this becoming one, is this taking our old piece and taking the unknown triangle and making the squared off piece? Is that where we're at now?
my understanding that
Because there's a parcel number on here that ends.
the survey found where Mr. Wood's property ended, and then identified who owned the mystery piece.
Because this parcel number in here matches up to the piece that the city owns. But then, I can't zoom in, but if you look, the city owns the blue highlighted, and there's that little triangle piece in between that still says unknown owner. So,
Yeah, because provision 20 states unknown ownership. So if they've identified who owned it, they didn't do it in this agreement.
Well, in some place, it talked about the legal costs and the surveying costs, and I wasn't sure who had paid those. Did the city pay those? Or did
No,
he?
Mr. Wood paid
Mr.
those.
Wood paid
Yeah.
those.
You will have to pay those.
You will have to pay them,
Or
or he did?
has
No, he
already
did.
paid? He has paid them, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Again, my understanding is whenever the city is selling off property, it is the to-be properties owner to pay all the surveying costs associated.
Right, and I billed him for the survey when the whole thing happened, and they called for, and we ordered the survey, so we paid for it. I billed him, and he did pay. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
So I can understand where, I guess, some of the council's opinion is on a higher value. What I would suggest though is the council is not a body to teach someone a lesson.
And I mean, I guess the way you look at it is if we don't sell to them, the building's gonna stay there and not in compliance, or if we do, I mean, at this point, is that basically where we're at? Either let them keep this building not in compliance, or we sell them this property for this price. I mean, is that
Well,
basically where we're at?
if we don't sell it to him, we can force him to take it down. They do it in Lynn County all the time.
It's not the first time this has happened.
And let me just say too, that unknown section, if it turns out to be city property, it says it's about 202 square feet, then that just brings that dollar per square feet down even more. So I would just as soon say we sell it to him at least $1.50 to $2 per square foot.
With clarification on any type of utility.
Utility
Easements.
easements.
And do we want to try to get a better understanding on this parcel or piece that is being identified as unknown?
Yeah, because if you say they identified it,
It was my understanding, again, where Mr. Wood's property ended, everything extending outward from that toward the alley was identified as city property.
so if that's the case, then we've got another 202 square feet.
Yeah, like 1,100 and some, 1,200.
Yeah.
Well, and the description needs to be fixed so that it doesn't say it's an unknown owner.
So would the council stand at this time be to get some of these questions or gray area clarified, and then bring it back on the agenda for consideration per se?
I guess I would, yeah, my main concern would be that triangular piece, because we know we can obviously sell the piece that we currently own, but if the piece closest to his building is the unknown, I say get that part maybe hammered out first.
So what the attorney had told me was that they couldn't identify the owner. It was part of a railroad right of way, and it may not have been transferred correctly. And what we're doing here is saying that we're giving up any claim we have to it. He has to fight with whoever the owner is to get rights to the property.
So how does it get transferred if it's unknown and we're giving up our rights? You don't know. how
We're
that
doing
works.
a quick claim deed for that piece, just saying that if it is ours, we give up our rights to it. If it's not, he has to figure out who he needs to get.
So that's on him.
paperwork from. I
It
think
needs to
it's,
be straightened out, figure out what's what.
I would like to entertain a motion to table this.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Rich, second by John to table 5.2, sale of property north and adjacent to 216 East Main. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify with aye. Opposed, nay. Motion to table carries unanimously. 6.0 proclamations, none. 7.0 old business. 7.1 discussion and possible action on the interim fulfillment of administrative duties and responsibilities.
Well, Beth, I know when you and I talked last week, you said that you've talked to Ginger and Linda about organization. Can you fill us in on?
so we figured we'd kind of, split up a little bit of the things like accounts payable and things like that. Ginger said she would take over. So we just have to kind of rearrange how we function in the office, so to speak. So I don't know, it still has a little work to do, I think, but that's kind of where we were at. We were like, well, we could probably make it work if we just shift kind of how everything's flowing right now.
Okay, and you think this is an undertaking that you would be willing to do? And
Yeah, they seemed agreeable to it, so, I mean, it puts a little pressure on them too, so I was like, all right, let's talk about it.
well, and I think, you know, we did mention, I think we could probably get some temporary help in there, and I think you said the library's offered help, the Parks and Rec has offered help, and
Yeah.
so I'm glad to see the other
They're
entities,
cohesive.
yes,
Yeah.
stepping up and doing things, so I think we could make this function and work, and so.
If not, we'll let you know.
Well, and if we need to bring in some temporary part-time help, I think that'd be worth us having a discussion and doing.
Sure.
So also in follow-up, I spoke with Miss Cindy Kendall and Mr. Patrick Callahan, and they both did offer their service on a per-call basis,
Oh, good.
that they would
Okay.
assist any way that they could. We'd have to have discussions on any type of charges that would be applied, but they did offer to assist us.
Glad to hear that. So do you need a motion then to say, make Beth an interim city administrator? And with that, look at Patrick and Cindy as consultants?
Yes, I would like to see us do that because we are naming Beth an interim city administrator to handle those day-to-days that were handled in the past by Jacob, that now we have a vacancy there. So
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
motion by Rich, second by Kay, to name Beth as interim city administrator, to delegate any duties that she sees necessary from the position, and to contact Miss Cindy Kendall and Mr. Patrick Callahan as deemed necessary.
And with that, I would like to see next meeting, we have on compensation for said individuals, Beth and Ginger and so forth, for their perceived step-up roles and time. And if we could, I know like when we did this last time with Mr. Callahan, we had an agreement with him for X amount of dollars and I think so many hours or something. So I don't know if we would be able to, between he and Cindy, get something like that.
I'm sure we could. They basically left it open
Yeah.
until we reach back out to them.
Well, at least if they want to say, yes, I will help you at X number of dollars per hour or something. So we kind of have a ballpark to know what we're dealing in. So.
Rebecca, is there any public comment on this agenda item?
Can you tell me the number again that we're on?
We're on agenda item 7.1.
Then no, there's no public comment on this.
So again, motion by Rich, second by Kay. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimous.
I would just like to add that right now, Beth can call the shots to a great extent, and we would back that. If somebody says no, we may have to have a conversation.
Sure. Yep, I believe that the council and the mayor will certainly support Beth on decision-making. 8.0, new business. 8.1, discussion and possible action on Anamosa proposed well 6 funding application form and draft scope of services agreement. Andrew Marsh, HR Green.
Okay, Andrew, I think I have unmuted you.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, please state your
Wonderful.
name and your position.
Andrew Marsh, Vice President, HR Green Company, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Thank you all for putting me on the agenda this evening. I have 2 items in your council packets for your consideration. The first is a draft of a funding application that can be used for you to request financing from the state for your upcoming well project. That's the project that we've been talking about for several recent council meetings. If you recall, please, you have 2 existing wells. The older of the 2 is over 50 years old, and it's the one located just as you enter the water treatment plant on the southeast corner of the facility. As I mentioned, it's over 50 years old, and so it's beyond its design life. So we need to take steps to replace it. And as we've discussed in some of the previous meetings, the DNR requires a 200-foot radius of setback for a new well. And we've had several discussions recently about the best location for the future well. And I know that the discussions for the property for the future well are ongoing, but this funding would apply to any location that is chosen, and it's to merely get the process started of planning, funding, designing, bidding, and constructing the new well. So I fully realize that we haven't purchased the property yet for the future well necessarily, but we do need to get the process started because it is a time-consuming process. The design, bidding, and construction and permitting can take in the neighborhood of a couple of years. And so since we're already beyond the design life of the older of the 2 wells, we definitely need to get started. So there are 2, like I said, there are 2 items in your council packets. The first is a draft funding application. And with your permission, I would like to work with the city staff to complete it and submit it. That will make you eligible for using the state revolving fund loan, which is a low interest loan from the state, and it will put you on the list to be eligible for that funding. It doesn't mean that you have to use it. If you decide later on down the road that you're not interested in following all of the state's requirements for that funding, don't want to do the American Iron and Steel and Davis-Bacon wage rates and that kind of thing, you can always fund it differently. But this is just a way to save your spot in line for eligibility for that low interest loan, should you want it. The second item in your council packets is a proposal for planning and the first part of design for the well. Again, we do not have a site selected yet, so we can't get too far along in the design yet, but we do want to get started because it is a time-consuming process. So we have a proposal for you for the preliminary engineering and the permitting aspects, including filling out and completing this funding application. That's a really brief overview of what you have in front of you, and I would open it up to answer any questions from the council.
Is there any questions for Mr. Marsh from the council?
I don't.
Rebecca, is there any public comment on agenda item 8.1?
There is not.
So Basically, all I ask for consideration from the council tonight is permission from you all to complete and submit the funding application form to the state. Again, it doesn't tie you down to, it doesn't obligate the city to use that funding. It just saves your spot. And then second is the consideration for the preliminary engineering for the design of the future well.
I'll make a motion to proceed with the application and the services agreement.
Second.
We have a motion by Rich, second by Jeff, to approve and permit HR Green to continue with the funding application and scope of services. Any further discussion from the council? All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That portion of the motion carries unanimously. Now I would like to entertain a motion to move forward with the preliminary design stage with HR Green.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion from the council? All those in favor of the second motion, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The second phase of the motion carries unanimous as well.
Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate it.
Part of the first motion.
It was my understanding that we was looking for two different,
Well, it was the proposed well funding application and draft scope of services agreement, which is the second pieces here.
that could be, Rich, that's not how I was understanding it. Andrew, are you satisfied then with
Yes.
what the council has approved?
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right, thank you. Discuss 8.2, discussion of possible action on application for $100,000 REAP grant for the final phase of the Wapsipiticon Trail. Derek Lunsden with Jones County Economic Development.
Good evening. I just wanted to come by and see if I could talk to you all a minute about the second phase of Wapsipiticon Trail. As you know, that first phase was finished last year. We've been working with the county and some other interested parties like Walmart to finish out the trail and connect to the Hill Bridge. So we've got some funding already. We're trying to get the last few pieces in. Brad Mormon has a grant application into the state trail grant. And I was hoping that we could do something similar to what you all did prior to my arrival, which is have the city of Anamosa apply for a REAP application grant of $100,000, which could help finish out the trail. It would work very similar to how you did it last time, is that you would apply for the money. If you get accepted, it would come to the city, it would flow through you kind of like a fiscal agent, for other words, and go directly to the trail process. And then at the end, they give you the paperwork to submit to the state. So really it's a simple pass-through maneuver, but the only way you're eligible is if you're a city and the county doesn't qualify for this particular round of funding. So I'm here to see if we can get permission for Jason to apply on behalf of the council and have the mayor sign the relevant paper.
With a application of this nature, Derek, is a match required?
No. The nice thing about REAP is this is the $100,000 they have set aside for these types of projects. What happened is you get the money, you get 90% of it up front, and then at the end of the project, you submit all the receipts that add up to $100,000, and then you get the other 10%. There's no match required or anything else.
Do you complete the application or does the city?
I can do that. I just need, once I get it done, I just need to have the mayor sign the two places that needs to take signature. And I will also take it to the county REAP commission. They also have to sign it as well.
So there's really nothing for the city to do except sign a couple of forms and approve it and
and just make sure that when it comes in, get the money over to Brad and he'll get the information back. It's one of the simple screens you can find.
All right.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Kay, second by Rich, to further an application for $100,000 REAP grant for the final phase of the Wapsipinicon Trail project. Any further discussion from council? Rebecca, is there any public comment?
No, there is not.
All those in favor of the motion signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimous. Thanks, Derek. 8.3, discussion of possible action regarding Alliance Club in Anamosa. Chester Stanfield, Terry Durham, Jerry Inman, representatives.
Okay, I'm Chester Stanfield, and we're from District 9 EC. And we have 44 Lions clubs in 7 different counties. So we have over 1,323 Lion members. And what we do, we work within the community. We're the service organization, the oldest service organization in the world as far as providing service to the community. We are typically involved in each school doing kids site. This is where we go in and screen the children's eyes. This serves as the option to get the families having to go through an optometrist to have their children's eyes screened prior to going into school. Anything that is noted in the abnormalities and stuff is brought back to the school and also to the parents. Jerry Inman here and his wife has been screening the children in Anamosa, so he can tell you what they've been doing here so far.
Thank you. I asked a simple question. How many of you have had a child or a grandchild pass through the preschools or the daycares here in town in the last 20 years? Anybody? Well, that's unbelievable. My wife and I, the Iowa Kids Eye program where we screen the children is about 20 years old. My wife and I are members of the Stanford Lions Club. We live in Mechanicsville. Some of our first screening was here in Anamosa. I don't know how we got hooked into Anamosa, but for the last probably 10, 15 years, we have screened at the Anamosa WIC, Women, Infants, Children Clinic, the Anamosa Head Start, Strawberry Hill, Kids R Us, and St. Pat's. Last year, we screened 132 children at these 5 sites. 9 children were referred for further evaluation by eye professionals for possible eye problems. The previous year, I thought I'd check back another year, and unbelievably, we screened 132 children also. 6 children were referred. Now, I have a vested interest why I want a Lions Club up here. When I started screening up here, I was 55. I am now 75. My wife has developed some medical issues and is no longer to work with me. And it seems logic to me that the service to the children here in Anamosa should be done by a local Lions Club. I am very much aware that the school nurse at Strawberry Hill, if I go out with the paperwork tomorrow, if I can get through the front door because of the pandemic, she would sign it. She would become a member. She believes very strongly in this program. It's one reason for a Lions Club to be formed here in Anamosa. Thank you.
I also am working here in Anamosa too. I'm Terry Durham, and I live in Cedar Rapids. I belong to Cedar Rapids and Lions Club. By the way, it's 100 years old this year. We can't have our party simply because of the pandemic going on, but that's another day, another dollar, I guess. Anyway, the project that I work with here in Anamosa deals with the prison down here. As you well know, Lions are probably known for vision more than they are anything else. Although we do work in other areas. But the vision program, we collect massive amounts of glasses. I'm talking probably 250, 300,000 pairs a year just in the state of Iowa. And around the United States, we probably collect well over 1 million pairs easily. And those glasses go, after they're cleaned and they're cataloged and boxed up, those end up in the third world countries, or countries people who need glasses. You can't very well hold a job down if you can't read or be able to see what you're doing. And so what I do at the prison is we bring the glasses in here, the raw product. I brought you probably 500 pairs today that we just collected over at our state office in Ames. And what they do is they clean those, they clean them up. We actually bought the prison a dishwasher out there, and that's how we clean most of them, as well as go through them after that by hand. They catalog them. We have 2 machines. I can't recall the name of them. Yeah, they simply just look at it, look at the glasses, and determine what the prescription is. And it prints out what the prescription is, and then those are posted or dropped into a little plastic bag, and then a little plastic bag along with 49 others goes into a box like this, and then it's shipped overseas with the prescription on it. What you get is a lot of eye professionals who do, or others, church, mission, that doesn't have to be just strictly eye people, but it's people who go overseas and do these mission trips. And I know right now that's all on hold, of course, because of the pandemic that's going on in the United States and around the world. So we're screening glasses. We've also been placed on hold out at the facility out here simply because of they need the space to take in inmates from other prisons that, in other words, they're trying to control. They've never had the COVID-19 virus in this facility out here, nor do they want it. You have about 1,000 people out there. And I keep kidding our district governor over here that I've got 1,000 people that would willingly sign up for Lions, but I don't think the international would quite accept them due to their past history. So that's why we're looking to put a Lions Club here. And I would turn that project well over to them. Myself and a lady from Marshalltown are currently working on the project right now. There are several other things we get involved with. For an example, we do food drives and stuff to support the local food bank. We do diabetes awareness. As you know, the diabetes is one of the creeping diseases and stuff that is affecting more and more people today than we really know of. We also do children's childhood cancer. So we do those awarenesses and stuff. And we do several other things within the community. A Lions Club, so we can start one, needs to have 20 members in it, and we are an organization that all the money that we raise through our fundraising in the community stays in community projects. Not one penny goes up for overhead. Our overheads are paid by our dues.
What we'd like to ask you tonight is to endorse our efforts in starting a club. Our tentative plans are to canvass the community towards the end of August, and having the council's endorsement of our efforts is definitely advantageous to us. And I just accidentally happened to have charter membership applications with me. It'd be great to have a member or two from the city council as members of this club.
I do have a brochure with my business card on it. I'll pass it on. This gives you just a little bit of information. I'll just add one thing. We realize there's a Rotary Club here, and we realize there's veterans clubs here too. So our purpose is never to compete with other service organizations. The Rotary does good work in various parts of the world. And maybe some of you are Rotarians, I have no idea.
Do you know how long it's been since Anamosa had a Lions Club?
It's been a while. Every district at one time.
I joined in 78, and I can't remember an Anamosa club.
Because I know there was a club sometime,
Years ago.
sometime in the 80s, but it was only down to like maybe 10 members at that point in time.
That's what happens to clubs. They age out and never replace themselves. That's the
Yeah.
magic.
That's kind of what happened with that.
Here's a guy that's aging, so. We thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, guys. Do we have a motion from the council to endorse Chester, Terry, and Jerry's efforts to organize a Lions Club within the community of Anamosa?
I'll make the motion.
I will second it. And wish you luck.
We have a motion by Rich, second by Kay. Any further council discussion? Rebecca, is there any public comment?
There is not.
All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion to endorse the Lions Club and their efforts carried unanimously. Thank you very much, guys,
Thank you,
and
gentlemen.
good luck. 8.4, resolution amending personnel policies related to standby pay for water and wastewater utilities. Dan Smith, wastewater superintendent.
Good evening. So the reason I'm bringing this up on the agenda is it was actually supposed to be part of our new handbook, which we have not approved yet. And the reason I'm doing this or proposing this is it would alleviate some of the constraints we have on the wastewater and water departments as far as having people on Friday. They still would get their 2 hours of pay for coming and doing the rounds on Saturday and Sunday. And with that, they would actually get 2 hours of pay for standby Saturday, Sunday. So essentially they're getting paid for 8 hours. And what we would be doing is eliminating the Friday off. So we could further staff both departments. Because let me tell you, it's been a very challenging thing with what all's been going on. And I think it would just benefit us all, department heads, as far as water, wastewater, and we can just get more accomplished.
Okay, just clarify, Dan. Okay, so I'm a water wastewater operator. When I take my turn to do rounds on the weekend, it takes about 2 hours time, you're saying?
It doesn't take 2 hours. It takes approximately, I'm gonna guess, half an hour to 40 minutes for each department. So we pay them 2 hours Saturday, 2 hours Sunday, and then 2 hours on call for that Saturday and 2 hours for the Sunday. So 8 hours total.
And that's why previously you were getting the day off, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And it's just been a real challenge with staffing. I mean, if you have a doorpost day fall on that day and somebody's gone or out, it really puts a strain on our departments. So that's why.
You all all of the employees take turns with the on-call, the checking the water and stuff
The
on
water and
Saturday.
wastewater departments, other than myself and Jim, are taking the rounds.
And if it's sort of do you have a list how they rotate? So folks know when their turn's coming up?
The prior city manager set that schedule up. And my folks have to agree to that. If they have something coming up, they talk about it a year in advance usually, and they set it up so you know you're gonna have Thanksgiving on, or you got plans to be out of town. Hopefully somebody will trade with you or work it out amongst themselves. So that's what I'm proposing.
Each weekend, is there a water and wastewater on call, or just one does both departments?
One will do both departments. But it has been a challenge.
Well, when you brought up door postings as part of the challenge, is there a way of alleviating the door posting so that takes that portion maybe out of your challenge with this?
To be honest with you, Rich, if it wasn't door postings, it would be 21 locates during the day. I mean, there's so many things.
Right, but I mean, if you're gonna have the locates irregardless of the door postings.
Yep.
So that
And
may
door
be,
postings don't always fall on a Friday, sometimes they do.
but that may be something we need to take a look at too. Of taking that, especially, you know, with Robert gone and so forth, you running with thin staffs at different points in time,
Absolutely.
so.
But this was initially in your employee handbook, and we delayed that for a couple different issues, I guess. And I don't know for sure if it was specifically spelled out in that new handbook, but this is something that I would like the council to consider, just to help out with the two departments.
And you've talked to Jim about this? And
Jim supports this 100%.
He supports it?
Yep.
Okay.
So
The current policy, Dan, did we transition to the current policy in the last 5 years? Or this has always been,
it's always been this way to my knowledge, that I can recall, unless I'm wrong, but I think I'm right. This is how we've actually done it for several years now.
obviously been this way for more than 5 years?
The only exception I will say to that is we used to have more departments than water, wastewater right now. And I don't really want to get in much more into that. So, this is from the water and wastewater departments.
About 2004, that would have started doing that, because then all the departments did it. So you had enough guys, it's probably maybe once every 2 months is all you had to do around it. So it didn't come up a lot. But
So it wasn't just initially, when I started, everybody did it.
So what are you looking at, about once every 6 weeks, 5 weeks?
Well, I have 3 folks at the wastewater plant. Jim has 1 right now, the way it stands. Well, 2 with Curtis. Curtis has been off here lately. So yeah, it's been, and really it doesn't, in the grand scheme of things, it works. But there's times when the water or wastewater department will have more staff than the water. So actually the wastewater department is actually
Carrying more of the load.
carrying more of the load.
Okay.
Just because we have the number of staff we do, and who knows what tomorrow brings. Simply put, you never know. So
Currently, you're paid 4 hours to do rounds over a weekend. And
Yes.
you're looking for an additional 4 hours.
now they're already going to receive 2 hours Saturday, 2 hours Sunday. They also, on top of that, receive 2 hours for being on call Saturday and 2 hours Sunday. So they're getting 8 hours. And so they're getting paid for 8 hours, but they're still getting the Fridays off. That's where I'm having an issue.
They're not getting paid Friday, at the end of the week, they're still getting their 40 hours, it's just you're not working and not getting paid for Friday, and you're picking up those hours on the weekend.
So then if they don't have Friday off, sometimes you'll work more than 40 hours in a week, is that right? If you're the one that's on call.
That's a possibility.
Okay.
And that's where your overtime will come into play, where your call-out pay is factored in at time and a half. It's depending on certain circumstances. this is something that's been kind of a hindrance to Jim and I believe, for quite a while now. So that's why I'm talking to folks tonight.
So these 8 hours would be, in a sense, all time and a half payout. One could look at it that way.
Standby pay is at regular rate. It's only if they get called out. So if they happen to have a water main break or something, they'll get called out. So the first hour, it's their standby pay. And then after that, they would get their call out pay, which would be time and a half.
It's factored the same factor.
Since they're not actually coming in to work unless there's an emergency, it's just they're standing by. They have to stay around town. They have to be able to answer the phone in case there's an emergency.
But I think maybe where Rod might have been going is if you're factoring in these 8 hours and then they work Friday for 8 hours, you're now at 48 hours.
Yes.
You'd only be at 44.
You don't, right.
Standby never, unless they actually have to come in and work, standby is it's not work.
Straight time
It's
for
just
stand.
you're on call.
They're
It's
just in
like
case.
Okay, so
on
that
call.
doesn't factor into the overtime
Right.
factoring. So you'd have 4 hours of overtime
Right.
potentially.
You're still getting paid for the additional 4.
Yeah, you still have 4 hours above and beyond. You're at
Okay.
44.
Unless you get called out like an emergency or something like
But if they miss a day a week, work that week, then they wouldn't give overtime.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
sure they're using, unless they use personal time off to compensate for it.
You still have.
Still have to work.
Still
You have to
physically
work
have
40,
to work
I mean, that's what it used to be.
If
That's
it's
where-
sick or vacation.
That's the way I understand it still is.
Or if there's a holiday that week, they don't get any overtime because they didn't work 40 hours.
Okay.
Not trying to reinvent the wheel, I'm just trying to hopefully alleviate some problems we did have staff.
Obviously, this is a proposal by you and from you and Jim.
Correct. We talked.
How do the employees feel about it?
Honestly, I've had discussions with all 3 of my people. I haven't had a lot of pushback on it. And I can't speak for the water department. I'm just looking at ways to make sure our plants are fully staffed and we're getting a lot of things done.
Just brainstorm, I mean, would like a half day help at all, so they work Friday morning, so then I don't know, just an idea.
I discussed with Jim that we're just taking out the shall be entitled to the Friday off. I mean, if they want to take it, they could still put in for the time off. It'd just be as a
And
benefit
also you
time.
gotta understand that they can comp some of this time. What comp time is basically, if you wanna comp that time and take that Friday off, you can still do that.
They actually give them the choice.
Well,
Right.
but does it also give you a choice then that if you've got something going on and they ask for it, you don't necessarily have to
Have to
sign
say,
off on it?
yes, depends on what we have going on. It'll
So-
give me a little more.
It gives a little bit to each side of, if you know there's something coming up and you need to have a full crew, you can have them.
Sure.
Even if they may request it. If you have nothing going on, they request it, you can still let them go.
If they give me that sheet prior to that Friday or wherever they want off. It's planned more of I can plan better for it that way.
Right, you can schedule and,
Where it throws a wrench in is when you have somebody that's sick for an extended period of time. And you can't really, you have to pull somebody from the water plant, do them rounds or work it out with other people with the scheduling. I just think it would be a better way to do things.
Beth, you want to read this or you want me to?
Thank you, unless you have a question for me.
So Beth is going to read an inquiry from city employee Robert Young, who is currently deployed overseas.
Good.
Question 1, what are they considering adequate staffing for the facilities? Wastewater department, 3 regular employees, 1 superintendent. Water department, 2 regular employees, 1 superintendent. which all can and are able to conduct rounds on both facilities. And there should always be at least 2 people on the Friday they have off unless someone is on vacation. If that was an issue, then one other way to look at fixing this is to put the superintendents into the round schedule, and it will help with the rotation going from 5 to 7 people doing rounds on the weekend, and help with frequency of employees being off due to rounds.
So to comment on that, when we were placed in the salary positions, the prior city manager took Jim and I off of the duties of the weekend. But we are still on call Monday through Friday, 7 days a week, basically Saturday, Sunday too. So we are their beck and call. And we did this for several years before we were taken off the hourly on the salary. So that's my answer as far as that goes.
Sure.
And to adequately staff, I don't have that answer.
So you're saying the supervisors would be
We
would
are
be and
exempt.
are exempt
We are
from conducting rounds and
not to say that I'm not down there most Saturdays and Sundays.
Excuse me, counsel, can I step in? Can you hear me?
We can.
yes. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you. With, when we started this off, it had a 1 or a 2-way direction that it would have went when we went from street department getting cut out of this and then us taking over. Like Dan said, we're on call 24/7, and that's where it puts a toll on us always being by the phone and having that obligation. All my guys at the time, and I've even talked to Robert, that how would you like this as something in the future? Would you look at it this way as not having that Friday off? There was not a big concern on my end at that time. For us to do rounds, come in and do rounds, it is hard on us. I'm just going to be straight up forward with you. There's, with our direction, there's a lot of stress and a lot of responsibility to, we can come in on rounds, and we do that. Now, when we're short staffed, if I have one guy that does not show up, I have to take over. Same with Dan. So we do come in for the rounds, but we do as a as need basis. But I am in favor of this. I wanted to give you that answer coming from me directly, that I am in favor of Dan's decision on wanting to do it and going that direction.
Jim, how does the staff at the water department feel if we were to transition to this new policy?
Like I said, I have not, when we talked about it, and we did, I did not get anybody with any arguments on it. So when we talked about it, it was more or less okay. And we did talk about it before Robert left on deployment.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
I got one more question for Robert. If this is amended to say no Friday off for the regular employees that have rounds then what is stopping the superintendents from being put into rounds? From my understanding, the superintendents didn't think it was far that we as regular employees got the next Friday off. They wouldn't, because they were salary employees. If this passes, why would the council not consider utilizing superintendents for rounds to take some of the overtime that would be accrued and paid out to the hourly employees for rounds?
Well, I would go a different direction, and if streets used to do rounds and are no longer, why wouldn't we include them into this rotation?
Well, for one thing, they're not trained for a lot of the stuff that's up at the water plant and the wastewater plant. And the wastewater plant doesn't have chlorine anymore, but the water plant does. And they need to be able to change the tanks stuff like that. Yeah, they can do it, but we'd have to train them. I mean,
May I say something on that? I'm sorry.
you're fine, Jim.
Sorry to interrupt, Galen. I thought you were done, but with the water plant concern, you're absolutely right with the chlorine. But before, I had a lot of issues when the street department, if they were to go back on this for any reason, that they don't have a day-to-day role at the water plant. So it's very confusing for somebody who's not in that position to jump in on a weekend, especially if you're going, say, a month and a half down the road and you're coming back on. It was very hard to keep them in check with everything that was going on there. And also I had to talk with the DNR. They didn't like the idea of having the street department on there that were not qualified to be in there on a day-to-day basis and know what was going on. Now, you don't have to be licensed in there, but you do have to have some type of knowledge of what's going on. And there's many gentlemen in there that have not been in the water plant to do, other than Jerry, to do particular rounds during the week on a day-to-day basis.
Okay.
So Jim, you would not favor bringing the streets department into the weekend rounds?
Correct. When we had that before, there was and it wasn't their fault by no means. There was just a lot of screw ups on the paperwork, and we can't afford that. Everybody on Dan's crew, everybody on my crew, we have a even time where we bring people over to the other department to get questions answered, talk to each other, day-to-day basis stuff, and it works out real well this way. We just had a lot of problems in the past.
Okay, thank you.
That makes sense.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate the explanation, Jim.
Yeah, you bet.
And can I?
Dan, how do you feel about the streets department working on the weekend rounds?
I can see Jim's point of view, but I can also see it from my point of view that we don't have 4-H soldiers anymore. Our rounds are more satellite rounds than they used to be. So I guess the way I would comment, it's changed a lot from when I first started. And I have people that are working there every day in this thing. So I think things do happen. But I would side with Jim on the water department. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, like I said earlier, but we need to do something. And I'll go back to Robert's comment about us being superintendents. Before we were ever superintendents, we were hourly employees, and we put our time. And we did not change the rules. The prior city manager did, and put us on salary. So that's kind of where it's at with me.
If I could say something. Dave, sewer operator. I am against the street department getting down there, just for that fact of goofing up. There's so many levels of, I mean, we're seeing it down on Second Street. There's so many levels of water department, sewer department. I don't want to see it personally. As far as everybody down in the sewer department, we're all for this. We need to have the verbiage right so we get paid right and the time off right. If I'm correct here with Bill and Rachel, we're on board with it. We just need to know what we can and can't do now. So the hours seem to be all right. It's just how are we going to get paid out? How you want us to get paid out? Because I was even assuming that was wrong with the standard. So I didn't know it was straight time. So, but as far as street department, no, I'm not on board with that. But I go by what you guys make.
Well, it was just a question. It wasn't necessarily where the direction, but just a question of why they stopped. And the explanations are great.
Hour and a half to hour, 40 minutes. It really depends on what you want to look at. I mean, if you want to get through there, yeah, you're going to get it done, but you're not going to look at everything that you're supposed to. So
Okay,
that's my input on it.
Thank you.
thank you.
And when I worked there, we did it, it started. Like Galen had some training, I didn't, I was always nervous. Like Jim stated, once every 2 months, I mean, you go up the day before and try and figure out all the readings, or like I said, now they don't have chlorine down to wastewater. You have to check that and test it, you know, or you hope everything was working. There was times I had to call Larry, you know, or I'd call Jim or Dan. You know, something didn't seem quite right, and I didn't want to let it go for till Monday, you know, so you just aren't, the streets just aren't, you don't have the experience or the know-how to really do it.
Well, on that again, they have cyanide, they have chlorine, I mean, that's just on the water side, so.
You only make one mistake, though, there.
That is true.
Well, I'll make a motion to amend the personnel policy related to standby pay for water and wastewater utilities.
Second.
Does your motion include the supervisors being part of the rounds?
It is strictly the amendment into
Okay.
that is before us, the resolution.
Any further discussion on the council? Any public comment, Rebecca?
There is not.
This is a roll vote, even though it's not noted. At least it wasn't noted on this printed copy.
Crump,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Mockart,
Yes.
Stout,
Yes.
Capron,
Motion carries unanimously. 8.5, discussion and possible action on proposal by Visual Sewer for manhole rehabilitation and lift station grouting. Dan Smith, wastewater superintendent.
So I asked this to be put on the agenda. This is actually part of our I&I reduction plan that we budgeted $250,000 for. The only difference is I'm going with a different company this year than I've had in the past because I'm not real satisfied with the workmanship. Some of the manholes have been done in the past. I've been looking at a lot of them, and they do have cracks up by the chimneys. This would be more expensive, but it's an epoxy, so they come in and actually spray our manholes, our brick manholes, and then they put an epoxy on top of that too, which is $311 a vertical foot. And we are proposing 200 vertical feet. I do believe that's the wording one. So it's about $62,300 for the 25 manholes that I propose we do this year.
How much I&I is this stuff?
That's a loaded question. You know it.
I just had to ask.
So are these your next worst ones on your hit list?
Yes, we've
prior?
been eliminating the very worst ones. We're working up to the better ones now. They're still brick, but we're trying to get all the brick manholes lined now. And we have a ton of them in. So yes, they are graded with GIS, with the mapping and all that. So we're picking up the next 25. We've done,
Okay.
I think this is the 9th year we've done 25. So we've been going after them pretty good.
Is this all in a certain area of town?
It's random places, yeah. And then the grouting is a lift station, and we have water actually leaking in and around the sewer pipe coming in. It's pouring in, and we're gonna try to coordinate with their in town to get that done at the same time.
Which
Iowa Street.
I don't have a lot of I&I. You always had.
It's actually pouring in around the sewer pipe down the bottom. You watch it run right in.
Yeah, well, that's been that way for years.
So that's why that's on there too.
So Dan, the extra 62,000, will that exceed the budgeted amount? Or
No.
are you gonna
We budgeted
make some scale backs within the project?
Well, we
not
budgeted
exceed?
$250,000 this year for I&I reduction. this is also a combination with slip lining. So it's not just slip lining with manhole rehabs, anything we find out in the system that we could deem I&I related. That's what I would use that line item for.
So how much more is this than the old?
We spent I think it was $28,000 on the old way we did it before. But like I said, I'm seeing cracks around the chimneys and they got to come in and respray them. I think it's truck traffic that's bouncing, it's cracking. This stuff will hold up a lot better.
Well, is there any guarantee that it ain't gonna crack too?
If they do, I mean, that's lesson learned, but what I'm telling you is the stuff that I've been using isn't holding up the way it should. I'm looking at better options. So,
How long transpires before you see these cracks?
depends on freezing and thawing has a lot to do with it. Truck traffic, I mean, it just depends on how much traffic's there in that street. I've seen in various places that
There's no guarantee in any type of service agreement with that company?
they'll come in and respray them, but there's nothing saying they won't happen again. That's why I'm looking at this epoxy. Essentially, that epoxy will seal it watertight when it's done. But you're paying a lot more money for it.
But it's all coming out of the 250,000.
That we already talked about during budget times. The only reason I brought it to you folks is so you know what's going on. It's over our $10,000 limit.
Well, I would certainly like to make sure that, you know, if we begin to see some of this epoxy cracking, that, you know, it's part of a warranty or a guarantee, they'll come back in and.
Right. Like I said, the other company would come back and respray them, but there's no guarantee with truck traffic. I just don't think it's holding up the way it should. So I've had them resprayed before, and I did see cracking again on it. It's just nature in some regard.
You've done due diligence on the research of this, that
Yes, I
gives you
have.
the comfort level.
Yes, I have.
Has there been other communities that have used it?
Other cities have used it. Marshalltown did 3/4 of their system this way. They said it was worth the extra money to spend to do it because they had an issue with it. A lot of river towns are going to the epoxy because it's, like I said, it's essentially a synthetic lining in a manhole. It's corrosive resistance. There's a lot of benefit to it. So. Any other questions?
Is basically how they told me, basically how I was explaining to it too, it was just like slip lining your manhole is all it is. Because that's how it's gonna form and stay that way. That's exactly how he explained it to both of us. Which I thought was, what an excellent idea. Because it forms it stays there, keeps it shape.
Thanks.
Do you need a motion? Or is it just information?
It's a possible action.
Okay. I will move to approve the Strong Seal Raven epoxy manhole lining project.
Second.
Motion by Kay, second by Rich, to approve the visual sewer manhole rehab lift station grouting. Any further discussion with the council? Rebecca, any public comment?
No, there is not.
All those in favor of the motion signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you.
8.6, resolution approving and authorizing users and administrators for the city of Anamosa, Iowa vendor accounts.
This is just to cover in case something got missed as far as all of our vendor accounts and who's authorized to use them.
So it's you and Linda and Ginger.
Correct.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Kay, second by Jeff, to authorize Beth, Ginger, and Linda for approving and authorizing users for the city of Anamosa vendor accounts. Further discussion? Any public comment, Rebecca?
No, there's not.
This is a roll vote.
Stout,
Yes.
Capron,
Yes.
Lockhart,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Yes.
Motion to approve carried unanimously. 8.7, resolution approving the appointment to the Library Board of Trustees to fill term ending June 30th, 2023.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Rich, second by John. Does council need any further discussion? This is a roll
These are
vote.
all just renewing their term. They've been on there, all three of these.
2 are renewing, 1's new.
Okay.
I think it's Gloria.
Gloria's
It's the new one.
new.
Yeah.
It's a roll vote.
Lockhart,
Yes.
Crump,
Yes.
Stout,
Yes.
Capron,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Motion to approve carried unanimously. 8.8, resolution authorizing the transfer of funds from the Library Money Market Fund 0131111105 to the General Library Subfund 0131111100 in the amount of $17,247.97.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Rich. Council discussion. Public comment.
There is nothing on this end.
Thank you, Rebecca. This is a roll vote.
Smith,
Yes.
Crump,
Yes.
Capron,
Yes.
Stout,
Yes.
Lockhart.
Yes.
Motion to approve carried unanimously. 8.9, renewal of liquor license, American Inn Lodge and Suites.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Rich, second by Kay. Council discussion. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion to approve carried unanimously. 8.10, review and approval of current bills.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Rich, second by Jeff to approve the bills. Any council discussion or questions?
I don't have a question about any of the items on here, but since it's part of the financial section, in review of the department reports, I did notice that the Parks and Rec mowed the cemetery. So does street departments compensate Park and Rec for that service?
They'll-
Okay,
I believe Park and Rec is tracking the hours.
okay.
I did.
Why is that?
They were short.
Who was
Nothing.
short?
The street
I mean,
department.
Parks and Rec, Parks and Rec has been helping the city. I mean, I've been seeing them painting lines and doing other. I just hope it's being reciprocated. Hey, what would need be?
Well, I do know with the mowing, in regard to mowing, that the Parks and Recs, Shelley and Greg had discussed amongst themselves for the streets to get assistance in some of the mowing, which then the streets would offset some of the projects that the Park and Rec had, that they could use equipment and some labor versus making some of their projects so labor intensive, using hand tools in a sense.
Well,
So did-
and that would be nice, but it's my understanding streets did not assist when Parks and Rec asked about the softball field.
With the skid loader thing.
Yeah, I was made aware of that. I just question the amount of time that was allocated or allowed for the streets department to schedule it in. It seemed like that happened rather quickly from when the notification was sent that we wanted the street or the parks wanted to do the project versus how much time the streets had to pencil it into their schedule. So I don't know. I didn't look into it a whole lot more.
I feel that that might be a little weak of an excuse from the streets department. Considering when everything else is hired out, that they possibly should be doing. Which I'd like to see them doing more and more projects themselves instead of hiring it out.
Like the project on Huber Street.
Yes.
Yes.
But for now, that's beside the point, but that may be a discussion we need to have as a council overall.
Sure. Why I know the council had discussion and, talked about how much money was being paid out by streets employees to mow grass, where it could be allocated somewhere else or conducted by someone that isn't such a high salary wage.
Well, it's evident if Parks and Rec is mowing the cemetery, we don't need to have the high-priced street guys mowing the cemetery. They need to be doing other things.
Like
Do we
having
have
a street sweeper going and
do we
doing
have-
the project on Huber Street.
the asphalt roller? I mean, do we have one of those at all? Does anybody know?
Yes,
We do.
we did.
Do we ever use it? Or do we still?
We had one, I don't know.
There used to be one there.
I mean, I'm just thinking, that Tower Road, I mean, that was it wasn't even the whole thing, it was just a small section. I mean, all the flat surface. I mean, I think that could have been something that could have
You
been.
know, right or wrong, we did it when I was there. 10, 12 years ago, whenever it was. We did that ourselves, hauled it in, rolled it. A lot cheaper, you said.
But we may need an agenda item to discuss some of this coming up here in the future.
I don't know if they still got the piece of equipment that hooked back on the back of the trucks for the city. They had a thing there that you just drug it out with that. I don't know if it's there anymore.
I know like Jared, the assistant director, he's being very ambitious, trying to get the train, to run possibly like the skid loaders and that sort of thing, to do some more work at the fields that they wouldn't have to hire out. So hopefully they could make that happen where he can get trained and then just let him use it. Because I know the equipment in the streets department sometimes isn't shared easily, I guess.
Actually stated.
Yes, it has.
Yeah, we're ready?
All those in favor of approving the bills for payment as submitted, signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. 8.11, review and approval of June 30th, 2020 Treasurer's Report.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. 9.0, City Administrator's Report. Beth, do you have anything?
Nothing prepared. Well, I do have something I can share. So our accounting software, we started the onboarding process. So our app, I have a demo app of ours so far. So anyway, it's been a little hit and miss with me getting my homework done for the onboard, but it's moving along.
Good.
Yeah, very good.
Is there any questions for Beth? 10.0, Mayor and Council's report. 10.1, Mayor's report. I'm sure you're aware that the electronic message devices have been placed here at the intersection. The DOT has activated a message device on the southbound lane north of town. They have activated one on the northbound lane just south of the golf course. The closure is still to occur on August 3rd. At our last meeting, our last safety meeting, the DOT had informed us that the gate that they were going to use just was not going to work. It's like a 40-foot gate trying to put it on a 24-foot road. It also comes to find out that since they've been using them, they've never had to open one. So they're really not sure how that was going to work. So I'm disappointed that now they're not going to provide the gate. They will continue to look for something similar to a gate that could be used. But they have approved to place the safety barriers in there. I believe Beth made an illustration available to you today that I had received from the DOT.
Anyone else see them? I couldn't see the illustration. Did anybody else have any luck with the picture or the diagram?
Well, yeah, I saw it, but so with those safety barriers, what happens? I mean, are they movable so
They can be removed, yes, so that you can access in and out for
If
some
there's
type of
a-
emergency.
But how do you move them?
You would have to manually move.
I mean, when you say manually, are you talking about using the skid loader? Or are you talking about a forklift?
No, the way they inform me is you can move them by your hand.
Okay.
That you would basically chain or cable them all together, lock it, and then somebody, obviously city employees or emergency crews would have a key to that lock to access it and remove it.
Have they looked at the gate that's at the water department? It's pretty big.
I
It just opens on a.
don't know. I can check into that, Kay. I'm sure that they would definitely have to be using something that's approved.
I don't know. It's kind of a cool gate.
That's all I have at this time. 10.2, council reports.
Library officers are Pam Benson, president, Sandy Antons, vice president, Jerry Marlowe, secretary, Lloyd Hunt's the treasurer, and then we just approved Gloria Hunt as the new board trustee.
It's a good thing we appointed Pam then.
It is.
Yeah.
I guess she could be president without being on the board. Makes it easier for her, I'm sure.
Anything
That's
else?
since last time. So,
I'm sorry?
so we haven't met at Parks and Rec since last time, so don't have anything.
11.0, public comments for items not on the agenda. Rebecca?
I'm just checking to see if anybody has anything they want to say, and I don't see any raised hands or chats, so I'm going to go with no.
All right, thank you. We do have one person present that would like to speak.
All right, Dave Carson, president of the fire board. Since Beth is in charge now, our thoughts for the fire department still moving forward. Okay. Just wanted to have it out there.
Good plan.
12.0 adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Rich, second by John. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion to adjourn carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone.